Before fast cars, neon-lit highways, and underground street races became the defining image of Need for Speed. The franchise began as a quiet dream about speed, freedom, and long roads stretching into the distance. In the early 1990s, most racing games were focused on simple arcade mechanics, limited tracks, and short, repetitive races. Cars felt like moving objects rather than living machines, and roads were often little more than flat backgrounds. In 1994, the first Need for Speed was released on platforms such as 3DO, PlayStation, and PC, introducing something unusual for its time. Real licensed cars, realistic engine sounds, and open highways inspired by real landscapes. Players could drive Ferraris, Lamborghinis, and Porsches while listening to calm electronic music and watching scenery slowly pass by. Instead of aggressive competition, early Need for Speed focused on atmosphere. Long tunnels, mountain roads, forests, and coastal highways created a sense of peaceful movement. Driving was not only about winning, it was about existing inside motion. Police chases were introduced as gentle interruptions rather than constant pressure. Sirens in the distance, flashing lights and mirrors, and sudden tension added emotional contrast without overwhelming the player. With titles like Need for Speed 2 in 1997 and Need for Speed 3, Hot Pursuit in 1998, the series refined this balance between realism and relaxation. Weather effects, night races, and improved car physics slowly transformed each drive into a sensory experience. Hot Pursuit, in particular, became famous for its atmospheric police pursuits, wide-open roads, and cinematic presentation. Players could choose to be racers or officers, exploring both sides of speed and responsibility. By the late 1990s, Need for Speed had established its identity as more than a racing game. It was a digital road trip, a space where players could disconnect from daily life and travel through imagined landscapes at their own pace. Soundtracks played a major role in shaping emotional memory. Soft techno, ambient tracks, and electronic rhythms blended naturally with engine sounds, creating hypnotic driving sessions that lasted for hours. Late-night gaming during this era often involved dim lights, low volume, and endless highway races, where players followed curves, bridges, and tunnels without thinking about scores or rankings. There were no open worlds yet, no customization systems, no underground culture, only cars, only roads, only movement. And in that simplicity, Need for Speed found its soul. This early period laid the foundation for everything that would follow, teaching the series that speed could be calming, that motion could be meditative, and that driving could become a form of digital escape. As the calm highways and distant landscapes of the early era slowly faded into memory, the creators of Need for Speed began to sense a powerful cultural transformation taking place around the world, shaped by street racing films, urban music, customized cars, and the growing fascination with nighttime city life. By the early 2000s, car culture was no longer limited to racetracks and professional competitions. It had moved into underground garages, abandoned parking lots, neon-lit streets, and online communities where young drivers shared designs, stories, and dreams. This shift inspired the series to move away from peaceful highways and toward vibrant urban environments. This new identity fully emerged with the release of Need for Speed Underground in 2003. Instead of driving through mountains and forests, players now raced through rain-covered streets, industrial zones, and illuminated tunnels, guided by streetlights and glowing signs. For the first time in the franchise, customization became central to progression. Players could modify bumpers, spoilers, exhaust systems, rims, vinyls, and paint colors, transforming ordinary cars into unique personal creations. Vehicles were no longer just tools for winning races. They became reflections of personality, mood, and imagination. Performance upgrades also played a major role. Engine tuning, suspension systems, turbochargers, and handling adjustments allowed players to slowly shape how their cars responded to the road. This process encouraged patience and experimentation rather than instant success. The soundtrack of Underground strengthened this emotional atmosphere. Tracks from hip-hop, rock, and electronic genres blended naturally with engine sounds and tire noise, creating immersive nighttime journeys. Many players associated specific songs with particular races, garages, and memories. Progression was built around reputation and consistency. Instead of short tournaments, players advanced through long sequences of challenges that required focus, repetition, and gradual improvement. This slow rhythm matched the sleepy tone of late-night gameplay sessions. In 2004, this vision expanded further with the release of Need for Speed Underground 2, which introduced free-roaming exploration for the first time. Cities were no longer accessed through menus. Players could now drive freely between districts, discovering hidden races, shops, and shortcuts. Each neighborhood had its own visual identity. Downtown areas glowed with skyscraper reflections. Industrial zones echoed with mechanical sounds, and mountain roads offered quiet escape routes away from traffic. These environments invited slow exploration rather than rushed competition. Customization systems became even deeper. Interior lighting, sound systems, dashboard designs, and trunk modifications transformed vehicles into moving personal spaces. Garages evolved into creative studios where players spent hours adjusting details under soft lighting. Sponsorships and magazine covers were introduced, reflecting real-world street racing culture. Success meant visibility, reputation, and recognition, not only victory. This system encouraged long-term dedication and emotional attachment. The Underground era reached its cultural peak with the release of Need for Speed Most Wanted in 2005. Set in Rockport City, the game blended street racing with high-speed police pursuits, introducing helicopters, roadblocks, and dynamic radio chatter. The Blacklist system structured progression around personal rivalries. Each opponent had a story, a style, and a reputation, transforming races into narrative experiences rather than simple competitions. Despite intense chases, many players found calm within these moments by mastering routes, learning traffic patterns, and moving with the rhythm of the city. Over time, chaos became predictable, and speed became controlled. The warm color filters, wide highways, and reflective surfaces of Rockport created one of the most recognizable visual identities in racing history, contributing to long-lasting nostalgia. Across Underground, Underground 2, and Most Wanted, Need for Speed became a digital expression of creativity, identity, and nighttime freedom. Cars became stories. Garages became memories. Streets became emotional landscapes. This era taught players that racing could be personal, artistic, and deeply atmospheric, shaping an entire generation of gaming culture. As the neon streets and underground culture of the early 2000s slowly became nostalgic memories, the creators of Need for Speed began searching for a new balance between freedom and structure, emotion and realism, speed and control, entering a transitional era that reshaped the identity of the franchise. This shift began with the release of Need for Speed Carbon in 2006, a direct continuation of the Most Wanted storyline. Set in the fictional Palmont City, Carbon introduced canyon races, nighttime mountain roads, and intense downhill duels that emphasized risk, precision, and concentration. Driving through narrow canyons under moonlight, surrounded by cliffs and fog, created a quiet sense of isolation. These races were less about chaos and more about rhythm, timing, and trust in movement. Players learned to listen to engines, feel curves, and flow with the road. Carbon also introduced crew systems, allowing players to recruit teammates who specialized in drafting, blocking opponents, or scouting routes. This feature emphasized cooperation and strategy, shifting focus away from pure individual performance. Customization continued to evolve, but now it was tied more closely to performance categories such as tuner, muscle, and exotic cars, encouraging players to explore different driving philosophies. In 2007, the series took a bold and unexpected turn with Need for Speed Pro Street, which abandoned illegal street racing in favor of organized track competitions. Set in closed circuits and professional racing festivals, Pro Street emphasized discipline, preparation, and technical mastery. For the first time, players experienced damaged systems where mistakes had lasting consequences. Crashes were no longer temporary setbacks. They affected vehicle performance and required careful repair and management. The atmosphere of Pro Street was calmer and more focused. Large stadiums, open desserts, and structured events created a sense of ceremony rather than rebellion. Racing became a form of controlled performance. Sound design reflected this shift. Engine noise, tire friction, and crowd ambience replaced loud urban music, creating a meditative environment for focused driving. Although controversial at launch, Pro Street later gained appreciation for its unique identity and emotional maturity. Varsail and Mettenth's search for realism continued with Need for Speed Shift in 2009, which pushed the series closer to simulation. Featuring cockpit views, realistic physics, and professional circuits, Shift focused on immersion and psychological intensity. The game introduced helmet cam perspectives, blurred vision effects, and dynamic sound filtering, simulating the physical stress of high-speed racing. These elements encouraged players to slow down, breathe, and remain present. Shift transformed racing into an almost therapeutic activity, where concentration replaced adrenaline and repetition created comfort. During this era, the series also experimented with narrative-driven experiences such as Need for Speed, Undercover, which attempted to blend cinematic storytelling with street racing. Although imperfect, it reflected the franchise's desire to explore emotional context and character-driven progression. Together, Carbon, Pro Street, Shift, and Undercover represented a period of searching and self-reflection. This series was learning how to evolve without losing its soul. Late-night sessions during this era often involved quiet canyon drives, long track repetitions, and focused tuning sessions under dim lights, where players raced not for status, but for personal satisfaction. Speed became thoughtful, competition became personal, racing became introspective. This transitional period taught Need for Speed that growth sometimes requires slowing down, experimenting, and listening to its own rhythm before moving forward again. After the introspective and experimental period of Carbon, Pro Street, and Shift, the creators of Need for Speed gradually began returning toward wider freedom, emotional familiarity, and open road experiences, inspired by the desire to reconnect with players who longed for exploration, atmosphere, and effortless movement. This return became visible with the release of Need for Speed: Hot Pursuit in 2010, a modern reimagining of the classic police versus racer concept. Set in the fictional Seacrest County, the game featured vast coastal highways, mountain roads, forests, and desert stretches connected by seamless open-world design. Players could freely switch between being racers and police officers, experiencing speed from opposing perspectives. Police vehicles were equipped with roadblocks, spike strips, and EMP systems, while racers relied on timing, navigation, and environmental awareness. Hot Pursuit emphasized flow rather than complexity. There were no deep customization systems or economic layers. Instead, the focus returned to pure driving, wide horizons, and cinematic movement. Long drives along cliffs and oceans became moments of relaxation rather than competition. The soundtrack and ambient sound design reinforced this atmosphere, blending electronic music with wind, waves, and engine resonance, creating meditative driving sessions. This philosophy continued with Need for Speed: Most Wanted 2012, which reimagined the iconic Most Wanted experience within an open city called Fairhaven. Unlike the 2005 version, progression was based on discovering cars throughout the world rather than earning them through upgrades. Vehicles were found parked across the city, encouraging exploration and curiosity. Players learned roads by memory, gradually forming personal routes and favorite shortcuts. The game emphasized spontaneity. Races could begin at any moment. Police chases could erupt unexpectedly. Yet within this chaos, many players discovered calm by mastering traffic patterns and city layouts. In 2013, the release of Need for Speed Rivals introduced a shared world system, blending single-player and multiplayer experiences into one continuous environment. Rivals created a living ecosystem where human players and AI drivers coexisted. Events happened dynamically, and encounters felt unpredictable yet organic. This structure encouraged emotional engagement through risk and reward mechanics. Unbanked points could be lost after crashes, encouraging cautious driving and strategic retreat. Environmental effects such as rain, fog, snow, and storms played a central role, transforming roads into reflective, shifting surfaces that demanded attention and patience. After several experimental years, the franchise sought to reconnect more deeply with street culture through Need for Speed Heat, released in 2019. Set in Palm City, inspired by Miami, the game introduced a dual day-night system. During daytime, players competed in sanctioned races to earn money. At night, they entered illegal street races to build reputation, facing increasingly aggressive police forces. This contrast created emotional rhythm. Day represented structure and safety. Night represented risk and freedom. Many players preferred nighttime sessions for their neon visuals, reflective roads, and atmospheric tension. Customization returned strongly in Heat, allowing players to personalize cars both visually and mechanically, reconnecting with underground-era creativity. The most recent stylistic shift arrived with Need for Speed Unbound, released in 2022, which blended realistic environments with animated visual effects inspired by street art and graphic novels. Smoke trails, graffiti-style bursts, and stylized motion effects transformed driving into a form of visual expression. This approach emphasized individuality and self-expression over realism. Unbound also explored themes of identity, ambition, and belonging, presenting racing as a personal journey rather than a competitive ladder. Across Hot Pursuit, Most Wanted 2012, Rivals, Heat, and Unbound, Need for Speed entered a modern era defined by openness, experimentation, and emotional diversity. Late-night sessions during this period often involved endless highway cruising, drifting through neon-lit districts, escaping police under rainy skies, and quietly exploring cities without objectives. Players were no longer chasing only trophies. They were chasing moods. They were chasing memories. They were chasing moments of calm within motion. This era proved that Need for Speed could evolve without losing its emotional core, adapting to new generations while preserving its connection to night roads and silent journeys. As open roads in modern cities became familiar spaces within the world of Need for Speed, the franchise slowly expanded beyond solitary journeys and personal routines, inviting players to share highways, races, and late-night drives with others through online systems and connected experiences. During the early years, racing in Need for Speed had mostly been a private activity. Players competed against artificial opponents, followed scripted paths, and created personal memories alone. Yet as internet connections became faster and more stable, a new form of presence emerged, one shaped by real people, unpredictable behavior, and spontaneous encounters. This shift became visible in titles such as Need for Speed World, which introduced a massively multiplayer environment where thousands of players shared the same roads. Cities became social spaces filled with drifting cars, flashing headlights, and silent convoys moving together through familiar streets. Although World eventually closed, it demonstrated that Need for Speed could function as a living online ecosystem rather than a fixed single-player experience. Later entries, such as Need for Speed Rivals and Need for Speed Heat, refined this idea by blending solo progression with shared world mechanics. Players could suddenly encounter others during free roaming, races, or police chases, creating moments of surprise and emotional intensity. Online lobbies became gathering points where drivers compared vehicles, exchanged silent challenges, and tested skills without formal communication. Headlight flashes, engine revs, and positioning on the road became forms of nonverbal language. Speed lists, playlists, and ranked events introduced structured competition, while casual sessions encouraged relaxed exploration. Some players focused on winning. Others preferred drifting slowly through cities, listening to background music and observing traffic. Multiplayer also transformed perception of time. Late-night sessions often involved joining empty servers, racing against only a few distant silhouettes, and experiencing cities as quiet shared dreams rather than crowded arenas. Technically, online integration required constant synchronization, server management, and balance adjustments. Developers experimented with matchmaking systems, progression resets, and seasonal events to maintain long-term engagement. Psychologically, shared worlds created both connection and solitude. Players could feel part of a community while remaining anonymous, interacting briefly before disappearing into the digital night. Clubs, crews, and friend groups formed naturally, organizing private races, themed events, and scheduled driving sessions. These small communities often lasted longer than official updates. Streaming platforms and social media amplified multiplayer experiences, turning private races into shared stories and archived memories. Highlights, crashes, and perfect drifts became fragments of collective history. At the same time, online systems introduced new forms of pressure. Rankings, leaderboards, and comparisons sometimes disrupted the calm rhythm of driving. Many players learned to ignore numbers and focus instead on atmosphere and personal comfort. For sleepy-oriented audiences, multiplayer became most meaningful during quiet hours, when competition softened and exploration returned to the foreground. Empty highways, distant headlights, soft engine echoes. In these moments, online racing felt less like rivalry and more like silent companionship. Through multiplayer and shared roads, Need for Speed learned how to connect individual journeys into collective landscapes, where strangers briefly crossed paths before continuing alone into the night. While official releases shaped the public identity of Need for Speed, a quieter and more dedicated force was slowly working in the background, extending the life of old titles and preserving forgotten experiences through community-driven modifications, creative experiments, and technical passion. On personal computers, players gained access to game files, texture packs, physics settings, and audio libraries, allowing them to reshape virtual roads according to personal taste. Over time, this freedom evolved into a vibrant modding culture, built on patience, collaboration, and shared curiosity. Classic titles such as Need for Speed, Underground 2, Need for Speed, Most Wanted, and Need for Speed Carbon became central pillars of this movement. Years after their official support ended, these games continued to grow through unofficial updates and community projects. High-resolution texture packs transformed low-polygon streets into detailed urban environments. Reshade presets adjusted lighting, color balance, and reflections, creating sunset tones, rainy nights, and cinematic moods. Weather mods introduced fog, storms, and seasonal variations that reshaped familiar routes. Car replacement packs allowed players to drive modern supercars, classic sports vehicles, and fictional designs inside aging engines. Modders recreated Ferraris, Lamborghinis, Skylines, and Supras with extraordinary precision, often spending months refining a single model. Handling modifications refined physics systems, offering more realistic grip, suspension behavior, and steering response. Players could choose between arcade-style drifting or simulation-inspired control, adapting games to personal comfort levels. Map expansion projects unlocked unused areas, restored beta content, and created entirely new districts. Hidden tunnels, abandoned industrial zones, and extended highways expanded exploration far beyond original boundaries. Sound designers within the community replaced engine audio, tire noise, and ambient effects, producing immersive soundscapes that blended modern recording quality with nostalgic environments. Online forums, Discord servers, and archival websites became digital libraries where tools, tutorials, and knowledge were carefully preserved. Experienced modders mentored newcomers, passing down techniques through detailed guides and patient feedback. YouTube channels documented installation processes, visual comparisons, and long nighttime driving sessions, transforming technical work into relaxing content. For many players, modded versions became definitive editions, preferred over official releases. These personalized builds reflected individual identity and emotional attachment. Modding also preserved cultural memory. As older platforms disappeared and physical discs degraded, community archives ensured that classic experiences remained accessible. Late-night modding sessions often involved adjusting files, testing changes, restarting games, and slowly refining details under soft lighting and quiet music. It was not about speed. It was about care. It was about continuity. Through thousands of unpaid hours, anonymous creators extended the life of Need for Speed, transforming it into a living archive shaped by collective devotion. These silent builders did not seek recognition. They sought preservation. They sought perfection. They sought peace within creation. And because of them, old roads never truly faded. After decades of highways, underground streets, mountain passes, online worlds, and community creations, the journey of Need for Speed began to exist not only inside software and hardware, but inside memory, routine, and personal history. For many players, the first encounter with Need for Speed happened in childhood bedrooms, internet cafes, shared living rooms, and small computer shops where disks were exchanged, save files were copied, and progress was celebrated together. These early moments formed emotional connections that lasted far beyond any single title. Some remember installing Underground 2 late at night, waiting patiently as loading bars filled the screen. Others remember racing Most Wanted after school, trying to defeat one more blacklist rival before dinner. Many remember driving quietly in hot pursuit while rain tapped against windows. These memories were not created by winning. They were created by repetition, by routine, by presence. Over time, players grew older, schedules changed, responsibilities increased. Yet Need for Speed remained a familiar refuge, returning whenever life felt overwhelming or quiet. Late-night sessions became moments of reflection rather than competition. Players stopped chasing rankings and began chasing atmosphere, music, and emotional comfort. The series evolved alongside its audience. It experimented with realism, fantasy, online worlds, artistic visuals, and narrative themes, sometimes succeeding, sometimes struggling, always searching for balance. Criticism, disappointment, and nostalgia became part of the conversation. Some longed for Underground. Others preferred hot pursuit. Some embraced Unbound style. Others missed simplicity. Yet this diversity reflected the franchise's willingness to change. Technological advances continue to reshape the future. Ray tracing, advanced physics, adaptive AI, and cloud-based systems promise more detailed and responsive worlds. Virtual reality and immersive audio may one day transform driving into full sensory experiences. Yet technology alone will never define Need for Speed. What defines it is the feeling of moving through darkness with only headlights and music as companions. It is the quiet focus before a turn, the soft hum of engines, the endless stretch of road. Community creativity will remain central. Modders, streamers, archivists, and longtime fans will continue preserving old games, sharing stories, and introducing new generations to forgotten highways. New players will discover the series through remasters, subscriptions, and digital libraries, experiencing the same sense of wonder that earlier players once felt. Need for Speed will continue to exist between nostalgia and innovation, memory and ambition, solitude and connection. It will remain a place where players go not only to race, but to breathe, to pause, to wonder, to remember. And on quiet nights, when cities fall asleep and screens glow softly in dark rooms, those virtual roads will still be waiting, ready, silent, endless.